This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and in this episode, brought to you by Mafia the Old Country, we're checking out the weapons of the latest entry in 2K's Mafia franchise.
Somehow, in a time before things like Tommy guns, having a sawn-off shotgun in a Mafia game seems absolutely essential for something very gangstery.
It's short enough to hide in a box of lemons.
Apparently, he's got a sawn-off in a pistol holster and a full-length shotgun on a sling. Wow, it's a proper sling, being used as a sling. We've finally made it.
Mafia the Old Country is out now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC via Steam. Now, without further ado, I will throw it over to Jonathan.
Yours is unloaded. You give him a chance to be brave. Then, you let him see it. That's it.
This is a really unusual choice. First time I've ever seen one, and it's nicely modelled as well. This is a variant of the Italian Bodeo Revolver, model of 1889, specifically the Type A, or Model A, depending on how you want to call it. We've just said 1889A, and it has this very distinctive, they haven't forgotten to model the trigger guard. It didn't have one. So there are models with fixed trigger guards and solid triggers. Now in service, that would have stayed up like that. So this is a military revolver, but also used by police and security services as well, albeit not for that long. And it's just more compact that way, easier to draw, and then you flip the trigger down, and then you can pull through and fire the revolver. That's an awful trigger pull, by the way, really terrible double action pull. And then we have the single action. So now, if you're watching that reload animation as I am, you're probably wondering why on earth is he there pulling the trigger to rotate the cylinder around to, of course, reveal the next chamber. That's what you're supposed to do. You can just rotate the cylinder around to the next stop, bang out a case, insert a round, but it's designed when the loading gate, so when the loading gate is shut, it actuates the hammer. When the loading gate is open, it simply turns the cylinder. So as much as it might make us twitch in this day and age that we're turning the cylinder with the trigger, it's supposed to work that way. And so they've modelled it correctly, and it's an Italian revolver, so why wouldn't they have it?
And since this revolver served as the standard Italian sidearm from, was it 1891 to 1910? The game starts in 1904, so it's quite a short window this pistol was used, but the setting has given credence to it appearing.
Yes, the model is 1889, but yeah, as ever, when things are introduced or adopted isn't when they're necessarily first issued. It usually takes a year or two. Not always, but often. Yeah, interesting. I mean, they're a little rough, I will say, or at least, and this isn't in great. This has had some long, hard service. So yeah, interesting that if that was the standard military issue with no trigger guard, this one with the fixed trigger guard is essentially an sort of internal police ministry, the internal ministry of public security had this version, the sort of officer's version, if you will. We have our first rifle, and maybe my first kind of, I'm not quite sure which variant this is, because this is the Spencer full-length rifle. So it's a 3-band bayonet lug with the classic Spencer bump and the short lever with the external hammer, dropping block or pivoting block, breech block, and then of course the very important tube magazine in the butt. It's the old chestnut load on Sunday, shoot all week, which I think actually was said in period about the Spencer. Very iconic American firearm. No reason why it wouldn't be in Italy in this time frame. I'm just not sure which one it is, because famously the Spencer carbine is a half-stocked affair with the barrel sticking out the front. I don't know of a sort of halfway house version like I'm seeing on the screen with 2 barrel bands and a short bit of wood and some sort of little nose cappy looking thing, or Not entirely sure what that is. We have one of those as well, a couple of those. It's definitely not those. It's a bit longer in the barrel, I think, than a carbine, slightly. The rear sights look like the rifles. Actually, I think they might be similar on the carbine anyway. I didn't grab one to compare, but the sights look correct. The action, that belly on the bottom of the action is really quite short. You see how pronounced the one on this is? I don't think that would necessarily function correctly as it's depicted. Some changes made there. I don't know if that's a conscious choice or not, but certainly an appropriate enough choice for a weapon. Of course, the other option is 2 barrel bands on the game gun, 3 on this. Well, what we often see in the post-life, afterlife as it were, of a military weapon is the stock gets cut down, the barrel gets cut down. So I'm going to say in universe, this is a cut down full-length Spencer rifle. He's got a bit of a slick reload going on, which is necessary, I think, for game purposes. You know, the old Henry and Winchester, of course, and even the old Lorenzoni from the 17th century are single lever stroke weapons. This is cock and cycle the lever and then pull the trigger. So it's a 2-step single action, not single action basically. 2 operations required to fire, which is what we see him do. He's thumbing back the hammer, operating the lever. You could get that fast, I suspect. Reloading up in here, not a thing. There is not a cartridge lifter or a means to get a cartridge somehow up this hole. If you're going to have to single load this thing, you drop the block, insert a cartridge, close, fire, rinse and repeat. They clearly didn't want to have to mess with mag in the butt reload, but it is quite iconic to the Spencer.
Luca's looking for you up by the stables. Tell him I'll be over soon.
Right, so next up, a conventional sort of coach gun, if you like, a double barrel side-by-side shotgun, hammer gun, just describes the fact that it has external hammers on it, which feels appropriate to the period. We had hammerless guns by this time, but lots of them were still that more Western-looking exposed hammer system. I really like the over-the-shoulder case ejection. That's very cool. Games typically don't model an ejection system on shotguns because they're probably not aware of how it works. I'm not sure that we'll get to see that on this, but I certainly won't hold it against them if they haven't gone to that extent. It's so hard to see it in the game anyway. You'd be modeling it for almost no reason. Brass case shells by the look of it, which is a real thing that existed.
Using editing magic of zooming in and slowing down, you can see there is, would it be an ejection rod?
It's like they're weird. They're like reverse hammers that get cocked when you break the gun, and they fly backward and whack the shells out.
So there is something coming towards the player, pushing those shells out, that then gets pushed back into the barrels when fresh shells are inserted.
Yeah.
But like you said, from a third-person perspective,
That's the ejector, so it should have that because that's externally visible. The little mini reverse hammers that thwack the shells out if you have an ejector gun. Not all guns are ejector guns, even today. This one is, for that dramatic over-the-shoulder, which I can't stress how enjoyable that is. I haven't seen that done before. You really wouldn't see this mechanism anyway. It would only be on, like, if we had the sort of gunsmith view or some unnatural X-ray or something. It just came to mind because I think I remember spotting it maybe once before when we had a real zoomed in the action shot, or I might be misremembering.
you can see the guy who hooks you up with all of your firepower. But one of the things he says also gives context to some of the guns that you find in the game, because part of this story is that they've got this relationship with the Mafia cell in Empire Bay, which is the in-universe New York City. So they're sending over resources and money and bringing back like whiskey and weapons.
Yeah, that does justify some of the stuff we're seeing. I mean, of course, American weapons are already world famous and exported around the world well before this period, so it wouldn't be at all surprising to see American guns in Italy. Somehow, in a time before things like Tommy guns, having a sawn-off shotgun in a Mafia game seems absolutely essential. There's something very gangstery.
And it's short enough to hide in a box of lemons.
Apparently, yeah. Gold hammers for some reason. So same model cut down within the game, I'm guessing. Same asset sort of modified, I would expect. Good that he's got his hand quite far down the sawn-off barrels. You lose a lot of leverage with cut down shotgun barrels. So you do have to give it a bit of welly as we say, quite close to the muzzle in order to have enough to break the thing open, especially if it has ejectors because they need to be cocked, and especially if it has internal hammers that need to be cocked. So actually this one might not be too hard to cock. It has some physical presence and weight in the universe. So he's double shotgunning this guy. He's got a sawn-off in a pistol-style holster and a full-length shotgun on a sling. Wow, it's a proper sling being used as a sling. Is this a first?
Might not be a first, but I knew it would resonate with you as a fan of slings.
Absolutely, it resonates. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of slings. I'm a fan of accuracy. And I must admit, from the first angle I saw him on the horse, it looked like the shotgun was just magically stuck to his back in the traditional fashion. There's very clearly a sling on there, and it's going around his body and conforming to his body. So we finally made it.
I didn't want to assume, but are you familiar with the lemon Mafia connection?
I don't know that I am, actually.
The lemon symbolism is in the early days of the Mafia in Sicily, lemon groves were like the original, one of the earliest protection rackets, because it took so long to get a lemon grove going.
That security comes with a price, of course, so we're going to collect what we are owed.
That the Mafia would be like, hey, nice lemon trees you've got. Sure would be a shame if anything happens to them. So it became a little bit of symbolism that the game's played with, especially when it comes to presenting firearms to the player in the opening cutscene.
A Carcano carbine of some sort. This is close to the 1891 TS model for special troops, or specific troops, it should probably be in English because they're not special in the sense that we think of them today. Troops that aren't cavalry but need a carbine, if I remember correctly, is the niche for that. And it's pretty close. We've got the cleaning rod there and a nose cap. It's just that on the real 91, the nose cap is quite a bit longer than depicted here. The rear sight is that pattern that we see there, so that's spot on. The receiver ring and the receiver generally looks good. Yeah, it's a good representation of a Carcano. Maybe the trigger guard doesn't quite capture that very perfect sort of racetrack oval that the Carcanos have. It's a bit more tapered there, but the overall impression is there. So yeah, interesting. So bolt actions we're more commonly used to seeing in games as the sort of more powerful, longer range weapons, but they've gone for a very short variant here. Palming the bolt there, which is fine really with these very short turn down bolts. You need to give it some elbow grease. Ideally with a knobbed bolt handle where you want to think finger and thumb, but it's not always possible with these harder to operate mechanisms. Clip getting dropped in there, which is correct. So it's a Mannlicher style on-block clip. You drop in there and then the clip drops through when you've finished firing. Let's see if that happens.
Again, using the power of editing magic. It doesn't fall out when you expend all of your shots, but the empty clip falls out of the bottom when you bring the bolt back when the weapon is empty. In real life, would it fall out after the 5th shot has been fired, or when you open that bolt after firing the 5th shot?
It should drop out when you chamber the last round because it's being pushed out of the clip and therefore there's nothing holding the clip in. So unless something goes wrong, it should drop out at that point. But it might hang in there, I guess, and fall out as you operate the weapon. You could have got away with not having it fall out at all, quite frankly, because it would be so hard to see.
I used this weapon for hours and I think I caught it on camera once, and that was sort of accidentally.
So actually, I've got out of the habit of noticing capacities for things because I'm looking at other stuff often. So, and this will no doubt be a balancing thing, is that the real Carcano has a 6-round on-block clip, not a 5, whereas this thing, when it's being loaded, is being loaded with 5-round clips. Okay, we've got a trapdoor of some kind. So it's the Springfield trapdoor, the rifle that comes in the US service rifle history before the Krag Jorgensen and after the 1861 muzzle-loading Springfield rifle. This one flips forward. Right, what do we got? So, cartridges being ejected, I noticed, look like the 1873 model 4570, or closer to. The original was 5070, which is a bit more of a Martini Henry looking, Snydery looking, big fat cartridge. And these are bottlenecked cases. The rifle itself is, again, I think it's being this, or a variant close to it. So I've picked up actually the model 18. Okay, so 4570 government. So what we need to do is bring it to half cock, pull up this latch, and the whole trapdoor flips up. And we get a little ejector, pops out, and the case hopefully comes out with enough wally to fall out of the gun, just as you see there, really. And then insert a new cartridge, slam down your trapdoor, pull to full cock, or you of course can cheat it, as I suspect he's doing here. Yes, so he's going straight to full cock, so that all he has to do is flip open, eject, insert, close, fire. Natural enough that you would do that. So, sorry, back to what it is. This is a legacy sort of platform based on the 61 Springfield. I guess the 66 was the first issue model, and then there's the 73 with in 4570. We've got an 1888 here, which is very late. This is the year the British Army introduces the Lee Metford bolt-action magazine rifle. Quite a few, a couple of generations ahead, actually, of this thing. The United States did not have a vast empire to sort of try and keep under control and massive wars to fight. They certainly didn't want to fight wars, really. So this series of rifles was just fine. Plus they had cavalry carbines that were repeaters and things like that. So it's not like they didn't have firepower if they needed it. Big, powerful, heavy bullet, black powder rifle. Yes, the velocity is relatively low, but it's a big, heavy bullet that's going to do you some damage when it hits you. They have gone here for some sort of compromise length between the full-length rifle I've got here, whether it's meant to be this pattern or something earlier, I'm not quite sure, and something like the length of this thing, which I haven't ever looked at before, but is a trials pattern 1882 short rifle. And that is in, he says cheating, also 4570. Of course it is, that makes sense. So same thing, but shorter. Now, so it has different sights, not like the ones in the game, but it is roughly the right barrel length, but it doesn't have the bayonet attachment at the end, which is the same as on the full-length rifle. And I have to show you the bayonet. So the gun in the game doesn't even have this provision. This is a pinch, like opposing levers. You pinch, I don't know if you can see that on this camera, but you pinch and you pull, and there's a whacking great rod bayonet stored under the barrel, and you pull that out until it clicks into place, and holy crap, you've got a giant spike sticking out of the front of your rifle, which looks not very sharp at all, but as the Sheriff of Nottingham once said, it'll hurt more.
You can do a rotisserie chicken on that thing.
You absolutely could. Well, it's also a cleaning rod, so you can jam it through somebody's face, or you can use it to clean the weapon, because it has a threaded end on the other end. If you press the catch and pull it all the way out, it's still a clearing rod / cleaning rod. But not in the game, sadly. We've moved on to another handgun, and it pretty much entirely is a volcanic pistol. 41 rocket ball ammo, so sort of pseudo caseless. Very, very short, very low velocity. Looks big and powerful and impressive. 40-ish caliber is no slouch in terms of diameter, but it's traveling at about 3 miles an hour, so not especially damaging. However, I guess you make up for that a little bit with rate of fire in theory, although these ring levers on a handgun, or a pistol, are not particularly fast. They're operating against a lot of mainspring pressure, and it takes a lot of force to cycle them. You'd almost want to pre-cock, cycle the lever, fire, pre-cock, cycle the lever. But of course, in a game, you can just go, I've got super strong middle finger, and I'm not afraid to use it. But in this game, it almost feels, I think they're going for, this is your Magnum pistol, Magnum revolver equivalent, your Desert Eagle. It's not quite the lines of the Volcanic. It's slimmer in the back, and it has a couple of other minor differences, which I think, given the location of the game, is coming from the Vendetti. See how it's much slimmer back here? A slightly different shape to the top of the frame there. Now, this Vendetti has a very revolver-style rounded grip, but others that I've seen in catalogues have a flat-based grip like the one in the game there. A little bit of a blend of the two. I'd say the lever on it is closer to the Volcanic.
To support your Vendetti inspirations, though, the gun in game is called the Vendetti, which is a bit more of a Mafia name, but obviously harkens back to that Vendetti inspiration.
The reload is pretty accurate, albeit, as usual, it's a bit too slick. You push up the spring, the follower, all the way up to the top, and then you rotate off to one side, and there's a little screw that stops your follower from flying out of the front of the gun. And then you've exposed a tube, and you just drop down your cartridges one at a time, and then you could snap that shut and the follower will fly back, but we won't do that because obviously we don't have a load of rounds in there to cushion it. To correct reload, they haven't fudged it by just randomly inserting rounds up here or down there. It's reloading as it should. So this is what it should really look like. Very short breech area, because that's a rising, falling conveyor, elevator, lifter, whatever you want to call it, as in a volcanic or a Henry or a Winchester, pops up and down. So it has to pop. When the bolt's forward, it has to have these ears pop up. None of that's going on in this model. On the real gun, tube mag, rounds come back, they pop into the lifter lifts them up, the bolt sends them home, forwards into the chamber. There's an intermediate stage, so they come back out of the tube, then they're sort of there, exposed. Where's the bolt? Unless I'm missing something. That looks like a self-contained cartridge with a brass case and a round bullet. The bolt's forward, because if the bolt wasn't forward, the hammer would be back. Yeah, not quite sure they've understood how this worked, or they just have decided to make it work a different way. We one-hand cock it. It'd be very, very difficult. It'd be impossible to do, actually, unless you did pre-cock the hammer and then kind of inertia slingshot. I don't think you'd be able to pull that off. In a way, I'd have, for the reload, I might have preferred a spin it round the finger reload, because that gives it a bit more energy to work with.
It's interesting that you picked up on the high caliber magnum pistol nature of this gun, because it is the most powerful pistol, and it's balanced by having 4 rounds, a 4-round capacity. Obviously, you saw that cartridge in the breech much larger than either the proprietary Vendetti 9mm or the rocket ball ammo of the volcanic pistol.
The way they've modelled that cartridge, you probably could just about fit 4 into that magazine tube. Much like a pump action shotgun, the magazine capacity is dictated by the length of the tube, which is, on this design, also dictated by barrel length. So because the cartridges are so short, you do get capacity more in at least 6 shot. I think probably 8 out of this one. This one is halving that for a much bigger, more powerful cartridge. You know, lever action implies power, doesn't it? But not in the case of this family of pistols in reality.
Oh, Madonna.
Made in America. There's more.
Ah, interesting.
Oh, minchione.
We have a legally different name, which I suppose we do for everything. This one sticks out a bit more because this is based, I think, on the Remington auto-loading rifle, as it would have been called at this time. You might know it from gangster movies as the Remington Model 8 semi-automatic rifle. We've got one in here, so this is 35 caliber cartridge, and ours has a whacking great magazine on it, which this one does not. So they're talking here about how it's made in America, and it's implied to be brand new, which it would be. Very brand new. Too brand new, probably, but it's just about plausible for 1905, if we are in 1905. Yeah, so I won't take this off, but this does come with its original short mag, which is much closer to what you see in the game, but it only has the one groove, which is designed to keep the casing a bit more rigid and prevent the follower from tilting. It doesn't have the multiple grooves as in the game, but yeah, this means you could choose to fit the short mag and load it just from clips, or have the higher capacity magazine fitted, which if you could afford more than one would give you the option to actually do magazine changes with your semi-automatic rifle. This one's a bit off-putting actually, because the magazine catch is on the mag, which is quite strange. I think for the old-timey setting, and well, certainly these higher capacity magazines like this one didn't come about until they were needed later on. So it shouldn't have that big mag, and it's good that it doesn't. Clip fed, as you see there, that's correct. Loaded from the top, despite having a magazine that could be removed. Much easier with this long one. Fun gun to have in the game, and a nice kind of reference forward to the gangster law enforcement shenanigans of the time period of the original game, where the Model 8 was much more of a thing. So they're squeezing in their high tech. What's high tech in this time period becomes a bit more available later on. Those weird right angle action bars are one recognition feature of the Spencer pump action shotgun. So a moderately early pump action, and an interesting choice. Fairly sure, unless we have failed to catalogue it correctly, that we don't have one of these things. Nice to see the one on the bench in bits, by the way, being worked on. I think they've gone searching for what's a pump action shotgun that fits the time period that everyone else hasn't put in their game, and who can blame them? So that very distinctive pop-up mechanism there, and those very curved, thick action bars. The original Spencer has a really very short lump of a pump grip. This is the improved, slightly more modern-looking version. You know, these things would absolutely be around. You're not going to have the latest 1897 or whatever necessarily. So I think it's quite cool actually to have it in the game. Otherwise, of course it's functioning much like a pump action 12 gauge, because it is one. Some good sparks from the muzzle I noticed when it's discharged. Smoke as well. Maybe the smoke isn't persistent enough actually. These shells may well be loaded with black powder. Maybe it should hang in the air a bit more than it does. In fact, yeah, fighting indoors with if they are black powder shells could become a real problem. You could end up with a real pool of smoke in a certain doorway or something. I don't think it wouldn't be too significant. Okay, this is a rare sighting. First time I remember ever seeing one of these in a video game. This is the Mauser C96 6-shot. We have a video on, I think this very one, on our channel, Royal Armouries channel. They originally came pretty much at launch, 6-shot, 10-shot, the much more famous one, and a fixed magazine 20-shot as well. They were all fixed mag at that time. And there's something about this design. I think it looks really cool. Bit lighter and more wieldy than the full-size pistol. Of course, you're losing that extra capacity that is one of the main reasons for wanting an early self-loading pistol in the first place. But very, very cool. And if all you need is 6 shots, you can shoot this more accurately, more quickly. And the penetration of the 7.63 x 25 round is significantly better than just about any revolver on the market, albeit your bullet size is, of course, smaller. This is actually a combination of our two 6 shots. So it has the conventional sights up to 1,000 meters. But actually based on this one, you can see they've tapered down the front of the frame as on this model. And they've just put a little panel in the back. A taper on the front of the mill panel guns is less pronounced. Very, very nerdy level of detail, even for me. The other thing is the grip on the game gun is a conventional broom handle shape. The grips on the real 6 shots look like this. And from memory, there's no 6 shot with a conventional broom handle grip. They either have that, or later they have the sort of so-called bolo shaped squared grip. Because they're all the sort of small frame. I don't think any of them have the rounded broom handle. Anyway.
So in game it actually has a capacity of 9, I'm assuming for gameplay balance, rather than the 6 of the real pistol.
Well then, they probably should have just done it the 10-shot size. Interesting reload. Okay, that's very cool, but doesn't really make sense. So, in this empty condition, he's putting in a clip, he's slamming down, like knife-handing down the rounds into the gun. Yes, that would work. But what would happen at that point is that the bolt would go forward, because the follower's no longer in the way, and you'd end up with broom handle hand.
As opposed to grand thumb.
Where you become one with the gun, and it's hanging off your tortured flesh. Not recommended. In the game, somehow it's staying locked open even with the rounds in, and he is then kind of slapping the back of this, and it somehow bolts forward from that. I could slap this all day, and that's not going to happen. And I wouldn't, because it might damage the gun. Or me, actually, more realistically. So they've engaged with how the gun works, but it hasn't quite ended up as it would really work. But I almost kind of give it a pass, because it has rule of cool going for it. Can I just, however, give them massive points for all the one-handed pistol shooting? It's all one-handed as far as I can tell I like the holster on the small of the back as well, so that, you know, I guess if you only have a pistol, no one can see you're carrying it. It's not concealed, but it's not obvious as you approach. And the animation for him drawing the pistol from the back is cool.
I saved this tidbit for the end in case it's just easy to cut out, but the serial number on the side of the gun says boob.
Does it?
80008.
Really? I mean, is this where I ruin it by pointing out that the broom handle has the serial number here, not on the side? It feels very me to point that out. Although I did laugh first. In my defence, I did childishly laugh at it first. It's looking good, I have to say. Yeah, good mixture of unusual weapons. They've really tried to choose stuff that's plausible for the time period. Something you probably haven't seen before in many cases. Or if you have, it's in a different context. The enemies don't feel like bullet sponges when you're shooting them with these various weapons. I don't know if your experience matches with that, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it was nice to see some quintessential Italian stuff, that they were staying pretty close to their setting. And like I said, even contextualizing the appearance of some of the American weapons. Yeah, it felt like a much more grounded third-person shooter.
They've resisted the temptation to come up with some prototype automatic weapon or some steampunk thing, or the obvious thing they could have done is give you like an automatic variant of the Remington auto-loading rifle that I don't think ever existed. Maybe some gangsters had one converted. I don't think so though. And give you just a straight-up assault rifle with a 30-round mag, and I think that would have been disappointing. So I think they've stayed true to their time period, which is a fairly bold move to go back to that period when everyone would be sort of probably expecting them to go back to the 20s or something.
Don Torrisi looks out for people around here. Make sure they are protected from misfortune.
Thank you to 2K and Mafia the Old Country for sponsoring this video, and thank you all for watching. Let us know in the comment section what games, movies, TV shows or beyond you would like to see on the show, and of course, subscribe. Once again, you can play Mafia the Old Country right now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and on PC via Steam. As always, a huge shout out goes to all of our supporters over on Patreon for continuing to support EXP, for helping the channel grow, and for allowing us to do cool content like this. Links to support Jonathan and the Royal Armouries will also be in the description below, so be sure to check those out and show them some love too. But until we see each other again in the next video, thank you again for watching, and we will see you real soon.